Good evening, dear audience. I'm thrilled to have you here tonight as we delve into a story that's as fascinating as it is terrifying. A tale of mystery and horror that will send shivers down your spine. Sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey through the eerie and unforgettable experiences of a group of workers who encountered something beyond their wildest nightmares. Our story takes place about 20 years ago on a remote construction site in a mountainous region. The area was known for its breathtaking beauty, but also for the many dangers that lurked in its vast, desolate landscape. High altitudes and harsh conditions made the work incredibly challenging, but the pay was good, attracting many eager workers. Among them was a man named Jack, who had traveled with a few of his friends from their hometown to this remote site. At first, everything seemed fine. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the air was fresh and crisp. But as the days went by, the harsh reality of the high-altitude environment began to take its toll. Many workers suffered from altitude sickness, and the difficult conditions drove most of them away. By winter, only a handful of men, including Jack and his friends, remained to maintain the site and watch over the equipment. One cold, quiet night, Jack and his friends retired to their tents early, exhausted from the day's work. But their sleep was abruptly interrupted by piercing screams from outside. Startled and alarmed, Jack and his companions rushed out of their tent, not even taking the time to grab their coats. What they saw was beyond comprehension. The tent opposite theirs was in shambles, torn apart as if by some immense force. They hurried over to investigate, their hearts pounding with fear. Inside, the scene was chaotic, bloodstains on a sleeping bag, and deep gashes as if something had clawed at it. Among the wreckage, they found one of their friends, unconscious and badly injured. Jack and his friends managed to wake him, and he recounted a tale that sounded too bizarre to be true. He spoke of a gigantic creature with eyes like glowing orbs and a face like a demon from hell. It had attacked them and taken one of their friends, Peter, dragging him away into the darkness. Determined to save Peter, Jack and his remaining friends set out into the night, following the trail left by the creature. The ground was marked by long drag marks and enormous footprints. Footprints that looked almost human, but were far too large. They pressed on, driven by the desperate hope of finding Peter alive. As they ventured further, the sounds of heavy footsteps and something being dragged grew louder. In the dim light, they saw a massive, shadowy figure, over 3 meters tall, covered in thick, dark fur. It was dragging Peter, who appeared lifeless, across the rocky ground. Despite their fear, Jack and his friend Mike decided to confront the creature. Armed with nothing but shovels, they attacked. To their horror, the creature's hide was so tough that their makeshift weapons had no effect. The beast turned on them, furious, its eyes glowing an eerie green in the darkness. The creature threw Peter aside and lunged at Jack and Mike. They tried to defend themselves, but the beast was unbelievably strong, knocking them to the ground with ease. Just when all hope seemed lost, a gunshot rang out from the direction of the camp. The creature paused, clearly startled by the noise. Seizing the moment, Jack grabbed a broken piece of wood and thrust it toward the creature's eye. He missed the eye, but managed to wound it beneath the eye, causing a stream of greenish liquid to gush out. Enraged, the creature roared and prepared to finish them off. Another gunshot echoed through the night, this time closer. The creature, now visibly frightened, abandoned its attack and fled into the darkness. Jack and Mike, battered and exhausted, were soon joined by other workers and some local villagers who had heard the commotion and come to their aid. They were taken back to the camp, where their wounds were tended to. Peter was found to be alive, though barely, and was quickly given medical attention. The men were shaken to their core, their minds struggling to process what they had just experienced. Over the next few days, word spread about the attack. Other workers reported similar sightings and encounters, leading to increased tension and fear among the crew. Eventually, a military unit was dispatched to deal with the creature. Rumors swirled that the beast had been killed, but the truth remained uncertain. Jack returned home forever changed by the ordeal. He left the construction job and often shared his story, a blend of awe and horror that captivated and terrified his listeners. Some believed him, others dismissed his tale as a hallucination brought on by the harsh conditions and high altitude. But Jack knew what he had seen, and he warned others to be cautious in that mysterious, perilous land. And so, dear audience, the legend of the monstrous creature of the mountains became a haunting tale, a reminder of the dangers that lie hidden in the world's remote and wild places. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope this story has both intrigued and chilled you. Stay safe and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we don't see coming. Good night. Good evening, dear audience. Thank you for joining me tonight for a chilling tale that will surely send shivers down your spine. This is a story passed down from a friend, and it happened many years ago in a small, unassuming village. Let us dive into this mysterious and haunting narrative. In the 1980s, in a quaint village nestled in a rural area of the western countryside, there lived a man named John Carter. John was renowned for his tofu-making skills. His tofu was so delicious that it wasn't just the living who craved it, but, as the story goes, the spirits did too. One early morning before the break of dawn, John was busy at work, making tofu in his modest workshop. The aroma of freshly made tofu filled the air, wafting through the village. He had already prepared several trays of tofu and decided to clean his tools before heading to the market to sell his goods. As he was about to load the tofu onto his cart, he discovered something alarming. Half of the tofu he'd painstakingly prepared had been scattered and ruined, crumbs and pieces strewn across the floor. John was furious and puzzled. Who would do such a thing? Then he noticed a man in a blue shirt crouched in a corner, stuffing tofu into his mouth. Anger flared within John. He grabbed a wooden stick used to press the tofu and shouted at the man, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" John swung the stick, hoping to scare the intruder away. The man, however, did not flinch until the stick was inches from his head. When he finally turned around, John recognized him. It was Sam Wilson, the neighbor's son, who had been away working in the city. John's anger turned to confusion. "Sam, what are you doing here?" The stick connected with Sam's forehead with a dull thud. To John's shock, Sam stood up as if nothing had happened and bolted out the door. Determined to catch him, John gave chase but lost sight of him as he ran out into the darkness. Later that evening, after selling his remaining tofu at the market, John returned home exhausted and still disturbed by the morning's events. As he passed by Sam's house, he saw white paper lanterns hanging outside, a sign of mourning. His heart sank. He hesitated, then approached the house and entered. Inside, he found Sam's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, grieving. John's voice trembled as he asked, "What happened?" Mr. Wilson sighed deeply. "Our son Sam, he passed away a few days ago in the city. We brought him home yesterday." John's blood ran cold. He stammered, "But I saw him this morning in my workshop." Mr. Wilson looked at John with confusion, but John insisted they open Sam's coffin. Hesitantly, they agreed. Together with a few villagers, they removed the lid of the coffin. There lay Sam, his body cold and rigid. But what made everyone's blood run even colder was the sight of a deep dent in his forehead and traces of tofu crumbs around his mouth. The villagers were terrified and murmured among themselves. Could it be that Sam's spirit had indeed visited John's workshop that morning? John couldn't shake the fear that gripped his heart. He returned home, his mind racing with questions and dread. A few days later, they buried Sam. In a gesture of respect and perhaps out of fear, John brought a bowl of tofu as an offering to Sam's grave. The village never forgot the Eerie incident, and John's tofu gained an even more legendary status, famed not only for its taste, but for its otherworldly connection. And so, dear listeners, that concludes our spine-chilling tale of John Carter and the ghostly encounter that left a village in awe and fear. Remember, sometimes the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. Thank you for joining me tonight. And as you go about your evening, keep an eye out for those things that go bump in the night. Sleep well if you can. Welcome, dear listeners. I'm thrilled to share with you a chilling tale that will send shivers down your spine. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be immersed in a world where reality and the supernatural intertwine. In 2010, James Carter, a man recently heartbroken and seeking solace, decided to take a trip to a renowned ancient city in a distant corner of the Western world. James checked into a quaint little inn near the heart of the city, hoping to escape his sorrows in the historical charm of his surroundings. It was a little after midnight when James burst through the inn's front door, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. The night clerk, startled from his drowsy state, nearly jumped out of his chair at the sudden noise. James, seeing another human face, began to calm down slightly but kept muttering, "That was terrifying, so scary." The clerk, though confused, offered him a cup of hot water to soothe his nerves. With the warmth of the drink, James's tense muscles began to relax. After a few deep breaths, he recounted his harrowing experience in the ancient city to the intrigued clerk. James had recently been through a tough breakup and decided to travel alone to clear his mind. That night, he had visited a bar in the ancient city and had a few drinks. As he left, the unfamiliar streets and alleyways confused him. He wandered aimlessly, unable to find his way back to the inn. Just then, he heard the faint sound of someone singing opera from a nearby alley. Although he found it odd to hear such a performance so late at night, he thought he might find someone who could help him with directions. Following the sound, he came upon an old theater, surrounded by a crowd of people watching an opera. The performers on stage wore bright, elaborate costumes, but strangely their faces were indistinct, blurred, as if seen through frosted glass. The songs they sang were also faint and distorted, like a radio with bad reception. A shiver ran down James's spine as he noticed the unsettling atmosphere. The spectators below the stage were equally bizarre, staring intently at the performers with vacant, lifeless eyes. The whole scene felt surreal and deeply unnerving. Deciding to capture this strange sight, James pulled out his phone and snapped a few photos. However, when he looked at the images, he was shocked to see nothing but a dark, empty theater. Confused, he tried again with the flash on. Still, the photo showed only an old, decrepit stage with no trace of the vibrant performance he had just witnessed. It was then that James looked up, and to his horror, the entire scene had changed. The performers, the audience, everyone had vanished. He was left standing alone in front of a dilapidated, abandoned theater. The eerie silence that followed was overwhelming, and James felt a chill run down his spine. Panicked, he ran back to the inn as fast as he could. The inn's clerk listened intently, and then nodded slowly. He explained that the ancient city was rebuilt on the ruins of a much older settlement. Such strange occurrences weren't unheard of, and many believed the place was haunted by restless spirits. The days that followed were difficult for James. He felt ill, his body weakened by the terror he had experienced. It took him nearly 2 weeks to recover fully, and even after he regained his strength, he never forgot the horrifying night in the ancient city. Since then, he vowed never to drink alone in a strange place again. Thank you for joining me in this spine-chilling tale of the supernatural. Remember, the world is full of mysteries beyond our understanding, and sometimes it's best to leave the unknown undisturbed. Sleep well if you can, and until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Welcome, dear audience. Gather around. For tonight, I have a tale to share that is both chilling and heartrending. It is a story from a time not too distant, from a place that could be your own hometown. It speaks of love, defiance, and the unsettling whisper of the supernatural. In a quiet, unremarkable village nestled in the countryside, lived two young souls, Alex and Emily. They were inseparable since childhood, their bond as natural as the river that ran through their village. But, as fate would have it, their families stood firmly against their union. In the 1980s, many things were beyond one's control, and familial disapproval was often an insurmountable barrier. Despite the vehement objections, Alex and Emily's love only grew stronger. It reached a point where they declared they would be together or not at all. One fateful afternoon, with determination and sorrow in their hearts, they walked hand in hand to the village river. Without a word, without a tear, they stepped into the cold, unforgiving waters, their fingers interlaced, sinking deeper until the river swallowed them whole. At that very moment, old Mr. Johnson, who was toiling away nearby, saw them. Panic-stricken, he rushed to the river, diving in to save them. He managed to drag Alex out, but when he turned back for Emily, she had vanished. Alex lay on the ground, coughing up water, his eyes wild with despair. He screamed Emily's name, attempting to return to the river, but Mr. Johnson held him back with all his might. The villagers gathered quickly, drawn by the commotion. Emily's parents were among them, their faces pale with fear. Despite their best efforts, searching until nightfall, they found no trace of Emily. Desperate and heartbroken, they continued their search for days, but it was as if the river had claimed her forever. Emily's mother, stricken with guilt and grief, fell ill. One evening, as the family sat in their sorrow, Emily's brother suggested they seek the help of Mr. Thompson, a renowned but reclusive local medium. They hoped against hope that he could offer some insight. Mr. Thompson, though blind, possessed an uncanny ability to perceive what others could not. He listened intently to Emily's father's tale, his sightless eyes reflecting a deep sadness. He spoke of Emily's spirit, restless and angry, her final wish unfulfilled. To bring peace, he proposed an unusual solution, a posthumous marriage, or an afterlife wedding, as it was known in old tales. Emily's father was taken aback. Such things belonged in folklore, not real life. But with no other recourse, he decided to follow Mr. Thompson's guidance. The next challenge was persuading Alex's family. When he broached the subject, Alex's father was furious, accusing him of wishing death upon Alex. But Alex, overhearing the conversation, emerged resolute. He would honor Emily's memory, regardless of the consequences. So, preparations for the Eerie wedding began. Alex dressed in his finest, a bittersweet smile on his face as he prepared to fulfill his promise. Emily's family brought an old rooster, as instructed by Mr. Thompson, who had assured them it could help bridge the realms of the living and the dead. Under a pale moon, with both families gathered, Alex held the rooster and allowed his blood to drip onto its head. The ritual was intended to imbue the bird with the essence of his soul, enabling it to find Emily in the afterlife. Once completed, Emily's parents took the rooster to the riverbank and released it into the water, their hearts heavy with sorrow and hope. Minutes ticked by like hours. Suddenly, the water began to bubble and churn as if something beneath was stirring. To the villagers' astonishment, Emily's body surfaced, eerily lifelike, despite days beneath the water. The sight was both a relief and a torment, a stark reminder of the tragedy. The somber wedding proceeded, a union that defied the bounds of life and death. Alex, heartbroken but steadfast, vowed eternal love to his lost Emily. They laid her to rest in his family's ancestral plot, ensuring she would always be close. Alex kept his promise, never marrying another, his heart forever bound to the girl who had slipped through his fingers. This story, dear audience, is a reminder of the lengths love can drive us to, the stubborn traditions that can tear us apart, and the unquiet spirits that linger when denied their final wishes. The practices of old have faded, and we now hope every soul finds its match in this life, not the next. Thank you for listening to this haunting tale. May it serve as a poignant reminder of love's enduring power and the importance of compassion and understanding. Good night, and may your dreams be free of shadows. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight, because I have a story that will chill you to the bone. It's a tale of mystery and horror, based on real events that have left many people questioning what's truly possible in our world. So, get comfortable, turn down the lights, and prepare yourself for an unsettling journey into the unknown. In the late 1980s, in a bustling part of a western city, there was a well-known diner called Old Jack's. Business was booming, and the owner, Mark Thompson, decided to expand into delivery to keep up with the demand. One evening, a worker named John Parker received an order for delivery to an old apartment building known as Golden Pines. After jotting down the address, John set off. The building was decrepit, a labyrinth of corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. After much wandering, John finally found the right door. It was covered in old flyers and looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. Double-checking the address, John rang the doorbell but got no response. Just as he was about to leave, the door creaked open, but only a crack. It seemed someone had chained it from the inside. From the darkness beyond, a voice instructed him to leave the food by the door. A hand slipped out a bill before quickly retreating. John took the money, noting that it seemed normal, and returned to the diner. That night, as Mark was closing up, he noticed something odd among the night's takings. A bill that looked like regular money at first glance, but was actually a ghost dollar. An eerie and unsettling counterfeit used in funeral rites. Furious, Mark gathered his staff and berated them, thinking it a prank. But John, puzzled and a bit concerned, suggested it might have something to do with the strange customer at Golden Pines. The next day, another order came from the same address. John delivered it again, encountering the same odd behavior, and another ghost dollar. This time, when Mark saw it, he was beyond angry, but also curious and unsettled. He decided to handle the next delivery himself. On the third day, Mark delivered the order to Golden Pines. He received the payment through the crack in the door and carefully inspected the bills, finding nothing wrong. Yet, when he returned to the diner and placed the money aside, he later discovered the bills had inexplicably transformed into ghost dollars. Terrified and convinced something was very wrong, Mark called the police. When the officers arrived at Golden Pines, they found the doorbell broken and no one answering the door. After a lengthy wait, they decided to force their way in. Inside, they found a scene straight out of a nightmare. 4 withered corpses around a dusty table, a coal heater still faintly glowing with the remnants of a fire. The 4 had died of carbon monoxide poisoning while playing cards. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that these people had been dead for over a week. Yet, there were fresh food containers in the room. Food that matched the orders John and Mark had delivered. Even more unsettling were the testimonies from neighbors who claimed to have heard sounds of laughter and the clinking of glasses from the apartment every night. The police found fingerprints on the ghost dollars that matched the deceased. Scientific analysis couldn't explain it, leaving everyone with more questions than answers. The story spread like wildfire, becoming a topic of fascination and fear across the city. The authorities brought in a spiritual expert to cleanse the place. According to the expert, the apartment's location and the timing of the deaths had created a perfect storm of negative energy, trapping the souls of the deceased in a state of confusion, making them believe they were still alive. It was only when the police broke in that the spirits were freed from their torment. Whether this was an elaborate urban legend or a true ghost story remains a mystery to this day. What's certain is that the tale of Old Jack's and the haunted delivery became an unforgettable chapter in the city's lore, reminding everyone that some mysteries might never be fully understood. Thank you for joining me tonight and listening to this spine-tingling tale. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, stories like these remind us of the thin veil between the known and the unknown. They provoke us to ponder the possibilities that lie beyond our everyday experiences. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, some doors are best left unopened. Good night and sweet dreams.